Hi, my name is Mark and thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how to build outdoor cabinets. This is our new backyard pizza making station. Let me give you a quick tour. On the left here is the pizza oven cabinet, and it puts the pizza oven at exactly the right height. Below the oven is a pull-out shelf for staging or a place to load up the pizza with toppings. Inside is a place to store the pizza peel, which is used for launching the pizzas into the oven. Above it is a deep drawer for storing some of our accessories. And below it all is a large storage cabinet. Next to the oven cabinet is a lower prep cabinet with a stainless steel countertop, perfect for kneading dough or smashing out your pies. Underneath is a cavernous storage area. This is an easy to build design, and the skills that you acquire with this project can be used to construct most any cabinet. So let's go back inside and see how it's done. One of the considerations for building any project is what materials to use. And the key issue for an outdoor project like ours is the harsh weather conditions that it's going to face. Water and sun are the enemies. And to cope with the daily challenges that these cabinets are going to face, we're going to choose to use a product called medium density overlay, or MDO plywood. And this type of plywood is typically used for road signs. It's known for its flatness, its weather resistance, and the paper face that it has takes paint really well and it doesn't show the grain. Before we start cutting wood, let's take a closer look at how the cabinets are constructed. I've pulled out the drawers and removed the countertops so we can see how it's all put together. The cabinet itself is essentially just a box. The sides of the box are held together with horizontal cross members. The cross members, or what I call cleats, sit in dados and rabbet grooves cut into the sides. The cleats have screws driven into the sides using pocket holes. The cleats also support the slides that will allow the drawer boxes to glide in and out of the cabinet. Down below, the storage area has a shelf that can be adjusted up or down using shelf pins that fit into symmetrical holes in the sides of the cabinet. By the way, I have all the construction details, including the cut list, project dimensions, and the sources for all the products I use when building these cabinets in a full set of plans. If you're interested, just check the video description below or drop me an email for the details and I'll tell you how to get your copy. I start cutting full sheets of MDO plywood into smaller parts that we will need with my track saw. If you don't have a track saw, you can use a regular circular saw, a piece of straight lumber, and a couple of clamps and make a fence and get great results. I place the sheet up on my shop-made sacrificial cutting table. It gets the work up where you can see it, and it makes it easier on your back than working on the floor. Once the pieces are sized where they are easier to handle, I can cut them to finish size on my table saw. Using a fine-tooth plywood blade, a shop-made sled, I get crisp square panels that are perfectly sized. After each piece is cut to finish sized, I add a piece of tape marked with the dimensions and description. It takes a few extra minutes to label all the pieces, but it makes it so much easier to pick up where you left off if you get called away or you're starting up the next day. And it helps prevent me from making a mistake like trimming a piece that's already spoken for. Now we can start the joinery. Before I begin cutting dados, I like to make sure that I have all the pieces that need grooves ready. I have set up my dado head cutter on my table saw, the exact thickness of the 3/4 inch cross member cleat. After the dados are cut, I change the setup to run rabbets. I attach a sacrificial board attached to the table saw fence. Then run all the edges that need a rabbet along the perimeter of the cabinet size for the bottom and the back. Now that we've got the sides complete, let's turn our attention to adding the pocket joinery to the cleats. There are lots of pocket holes needed, and I do my best to place the holes where they can't be seen when the cabinet is finished, which means all the pocket holes that will secure the bottom to the cabinet are on the underside. On the pizza cabinet, there is one extra step for the pull-out shelf feature. I add a couple of plywood runners between the front and the back cleats. This will give the shelf a contact surface as you pull the shelf in and out. I use a Festool domino to join the two pieces. It gives a nice strong joint when glued and flushes the two pieces well. If you don't have a domino tool, you can just use biscuits or just more pocket screws. Along the inside edge of the sides in the storage area, we need to add some holes for shelf pins to support the adjustable shelves in the cabinet. There are lots of ways to get symmetrical column of holes, but I like to use a simple jig. The jig comes with a specialized drill bit that clears the chips well and gives you a hole the perfect depth. I'll include a link in the plans so you can check it out. Before we get ahead of ourselves and start assembly, we need to think about the exposed plywood edges. For this project, I chose to fill the edge grain using an exterior rated wood filler. The filler is a good choice for this project since it will be painted. The filler is water-based, and I found if you pre-wet the edges of the plywood, the filler seems easier to smooth out. Plus it seems to stick better. Use a putty knife, your fingers, or whatever. We just need to get a thin coat of the material onto the surface. Once dry, spend a few minutes sanding it smooth. It works a lot like drywall mud, so when you sand it, it makes a lot of fine dust. The whole filling and sanding seems like a bit of an annoyance, but the payoff is it provides a very clean look once it's painted. For the plywood pieces that will be the adjustable shelves, I took a different approach. I like to add a hardwood edge to cover the edge grain. It adds some strength to the shelf, and it makes it look a lot beefier. I ripped some poplar 1 1/4 inches wide and then cut it to length. Then attach using the domino again, which does a great job of marrying the two pieces. Again, no domino, no problem. Screws, brads, or even pocket screws will get the job done. After adding glue between the two materials, I add a couple of clamps while the glue dries. With all the carcass pieces ready, now it's time for some assembly. But before adding glue, I do a dry fit as sort of a dress rehearsal. It helps you plan out what clamps you'll need and limit your mistakes. Then the glue goes into the joints and I begin sinking the pocket screws. Of course, be sure and use an exterior rated glue. This is a fairly complicated glue up because it's so big and awkward. Work fast but smart. Check your work by measuring the diagonals and keep it square. Wow, it's actually starting to look like a cabinet. Now let's turn our attention to building the drawers. I preferred building drawer boxes using 1/2 inch material. It gives you a bit more drawer space and it doesn't look so bulky compared to 3/4. I first rip 1/2 inch MDO stock to width, then cut the drawer pieces to length using a stop block on the miter saw. This gives me consistent pieces. Again, I take the time to mark every piece once sized. Most of my drawer box builds use biscuits for joinery. I like that it's fast and it yields a strong joint without the use of mechanical fasteners. I have a detailed video on building drawer boxes using biscuits on my channel. It's an older video, but it goes through all the finer points. I'll put a link in the description below. So with the biscuit slots cut in each of the pieces, I'm going to quickly do a dry fit. Just to check the fit, make sure everything's going together okay before I start gluing up. And the nice thing about this is it goes together very quickly. So number 10 biscuits in each of the joints. Put this last side in. And there you go. Not a bad looking drawer. and it goes together pretty quickly. And once we get some glue in there, these joints will swell. And the other thing I like is the biscuit is actually perpendicular to the direction that it will be pulled. So it acts as a tenon. If this is the front and this is the back, you're pulling against that biscuit, so that gives it a lot of strength. And there are no mechanical fasteners. And then from the side, you don't see any end grain, you don't see any holes, any staples, or anything silly like that. Let's check one more time for square in case it came out. And that's about it. Let it cook overnight. With the drawer boxes drying, let's turn our attention to the drawer fronts and cabinet doors. I took 1/2 inch MDO plywood and laminated a 1/4 inch hardwood strip along the perimeter. Once finished, it'll look just like a shaker door. To get started, I resawed some 3/4 inch poplar in half. Then I ran those pieces through the planer until they are 1/4 inch thick. Then rip them to just a bit wider than 2 1/4 inches, which we will trim to size later. I then take my time lining up the pieces with the edge of the plywood door slab, holding them in place with tape. I work my way around the perimeter of the door. You can let it overhang the edge, which gives you a bit of a fudge factor. Just get the joints between the rails and the stiles as tight as possible. The taped edge allows you to open them up like a book, and you can smear glue in between, and then close them back up and hold the position. Add a few clamps or clamp them to the table to dry. Once the glue has cured, you can trim the overhang on the table saw for a perfectly aligned edge. I use a straight cutoff to fit between the fence and the door to give me a good reference edge on the first cut. Then I flip it around on the newly cut edge against the fence and make all the subsequent cuts. As you probably guessed it, the next step is to fill that plywood edge with filler like we did before. Sanding it when it's dry so it conceals the edge grain. Once painted, it'll be virtually indistinguishable between a solid hardwood door, and it will likely perform better in the sun and the rain. With the drawers, doors, and cabinets complete, I can add the cabinet hardware. Hinges for the doors and slides for the drawers. I decided to use undermount slides for our drawers. I like the smooth operation that these Blum slides give you. They are a bit more pricey than the standard roller or side mount slides, but when you take a closer look at them, the slides themselves are pretty impressive. Springs, hydraulic pistons, and adjustable features that allow you to fine-tune the position of the drawer. All that engineering for about the same price as a pair of jeans. Not bad. I also use Blum soft close hinges for the doors. You just need to add a mortise to the back side of the door to accommodate the hinge. There are a number of jigs that make this process super easy. You dial in the amount of door overlay and then just drill a hole. The jig places it exactly where it should be and just the right depth. For attaching the drawer fronts, I like to do it now while the top of the cabinet is open. It makes it really easy. I put an 1/8 inch shim on the top of the door and set the front on top of it. This gives me a nice tight spacing in between. Once I have it lined up where I want it, I clamp it down from the top. Then I can drive a couple of screws in from the inside, remove the clamp, and I'm done. With the woodworking on the cabinets complete, this takes us to the end of part 1. In the next video, we'll build the kick base for the cabinets out of cellular PVC. It's an expensive material that I've not used before, but it promises to work exactly like wood. We'll see. We'll also cover the finishing of the cabinets. painting considerations, and you'll get to see my makeshift but highly effective garage spray booth. If you found this video interesting, please help me out by hitting the thumbs up button. And please consider subscribing to the channel. Most importantly, I would love to hear about your outdoor pizza build in the comments below, or any thoughts that you might have that would help out other viewers. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.